Hello and welcome back to another episode of Main Character Energy. Today, I'm excited to have Lindsey Gamble join us. Lindsey's a creator economy expert and influencer marketing consultant, recognized as one of LinkedIn's top voices in the creator economy. He's also the creator of a highly regarded newsletter featured on Buffer's best newsletters to subscribe to in 2024 list. So we'll talk all about balancing fatherhood and family to entrepreneurship and everything in between. And Lindsey's experience at the White House's inaugural creator conference. So cool. So let's get into it. I've been following your journey and newsletter for a while now. I'm so excited to have you on the pod. What's it like going from the music industry or journalism industry into more of the creator space?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is awesome. And I love that intro. In terms of my journey, it's been really unique. I talk about it a lot when people ask me my background and where I've come from, but like hip hop blogging was really where I got started in terms of creating content and just like what I'm doing today. And so after I graduated from college back in 2010, I started a hip hop blog writing about the local music scene here in Boston, learning social media, using Twitter when it was called Twitter at that time, and basically just bringing my passions together from listening to music and writing. And that eventually developed into this kind of hub that promoted local talent, but also somewhat of an internship for me to get into the social media space and to be able to build a resume without, official job. And so that's kind of been the foundation of my career. And fast forward today, I'm a content creator, I'm a marketer, considered a thought leader, a little bit of everything. But a lot of my journey really was built, back then. And those same principles and things that I learned play a big role in what I do today.
Absolutely. And just the blogger era, I mean, what a time. It was the very beginning of the creator economy in a lot of ways. And having those blogs had so much influence, so much power. What are some things that are kind of transferable from the blogger era to now what's called a content creator? Because we know essentially you were a content creator before it was called a content creator.
It's actually funny because when I talk about like the early days of influencer marketing before I even got into it, or when people talk about it in general, they always talk about the mommy bloggers. And so I wasn't a mommy blogger, but I was a hip hop blogger. But I feel like when I was doing my thing with the music, there was also like this foundation of the early influencers, which were like mommy bloggers writing about, new products and their family life on their blogs. I would say a lot of what I did back then is, I still do today. It's a little different, right? I was writing about the hip hop scene and music. And today I read about creators, social media, influencer marketing. So the topics are a little different. The platforms have changed a lot. Back then I was really focused on, the blogging aspect. And the biggest platform for me at the time was probably Twitter, where I was sharing out blog posts and networking, where today, Instagram was around back then, but it wasn't being used in a way that it was today for like content creation outside of like photography. And so, there's new platforms today like, LinkedIn, which is my biggest platform. And so what I really learned from that kind of era, that chapter, not so much about like how to be a content creator, but more so like taking your passion and what you're interested in and finding the right format that works for you to share that. And also focusing on your opinion, your perspective. I think there's a lot of, curation where we are today, right? Like that's a good kind of space to be in. But I think what we really love about content creators, influencers, thought leaders, whatever we want to call, is like really their perspective. And so I think what I do today, it's not just sharing the latest in social media or the creator economy, influencer marketing. It's really breaking it down, sharing my perspective as a marketer, creator, and any examples when relevant, but also like trying to help people cut through the noise. And so I do it with the creator economy. Traditional influencers do it with products and travel and everything else. So that's really a big thing I learned and bring to what I do today. I also think just the aspect of like you can monetize your passions, right? Just like you're doing, with all the things you're doing, is that it doesn't always have to be a hobby, right? You can find ways to, build revenue streams from it. It takes time. It's hard. Like even what I'm doing today as a solo person, I have this knowledge and expertise in the field, and I'm monetizing through consulting, and advising, and content creation sponsorships. And at one point, it was just a hobby for most people when you're building around topics that you love. And I think the most important thing is kind of figure out where can you really fit in. Is it working with brands, right? I do a little bit of that. but where I make most of kind of my revenue is through consulting. So not something I'm directly selling through my content, but the content provides a lead generation. And so like content creation you can make money directly from it, but also content creation can be a lead generation and bring in money that you can't directly line up, but it still helps you with your business.
Ooh, there's so much I want to dive into with that because I definitely want to kind of hear more about how you started monetizing. Of course, that's the big question. I mean, it starts with passion. It starts with having that discipline to be consistent and show up, have original thoughts and opinions. I actually want to start there because for one, I'm such a big fan of the newsletter.
Thank you.
I'm always writing back.
Thank you.
Because I know what it's like when you create content and you feel like it's just going out into the void. And so I like to try to give feedback. I'm always writing Lindsey, like, love this one. So
Thank you. Thank you. I
yeah,
appreciate
I
it.
truly do. So for even learning more about you and the fact that your background was in blogging makes a lot of sense. I definitely have an appreciation for long form content. And I definitely get that vibe when I read your newsletter. Like it kind of feels like, yeah, like I'm reading your blog on, what you're experiencing in the creator economy. How did you how'd you start getting into blogging and writing long form content? Why was that your route?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a pretty good writer. I never really had any formal training, but going back to my college days, one of my professors was like, "Hey, you're one of the best writers in the whole department." And that was kind of really surprising to me. And at that time I was playing football. That's what, I cared about, right? I wanted to be the best football player. But I've always loved writing, and that just was an area that I've always gotten good feedback on, but didn't really realize it until I started, putting it out in the world when it came to the hip hop blog, but even more in the stuff that I do today where video content's popular, podcasts, photos. I love doing photography. But for me, I felt writing was a way for me to really share my perspective and insights in a format that works well for me. I'm trying to do more video content, but I find writing is the best format for me in terms of being able to report on an update or something and then be able to break it down in a way that's insightful and has some color to it but still understandable. And I think where we are today is like writing is kind of a lost art.
Ooh, say it again.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of there's not a ton of people that get, unless you write books, there's not a ton of people that are building these big audiences fast over writing because it requires you for a newsletter, requires someone to sit down and read your newsletter
Yeah.
along with all the other things they read in the world. Also, the algorithms aren't really based on text content, right? Everything's so based on video. But for me, I feel like you want to lean into formats that are kind of with times, but ultimately lean into the format that works best for you, your ideas, and the audience that you're trying to reach. And for me, that's writing, that's LinkedIn, that's newsletter, that's, Twitter threads. Those are where most of my audience is. And that's the best format for me. Although I'm trying to expand into other formats and bring some of that writing to video and podcasts and more.
That is like a really important thing when you're talking about building a content strategy. It's doing what feels natural for you, like and what type of like learner you are and what will make you actually show up, right? Like you like to write, so you're going to show
Yeah.
up and write. If you were just forcing yourself to do video, you'd never do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's funny because sometimes when I write something, my wife, like, she'll be sitting there and I'm like, this is like pretty good, right? Like sometimes you find the words that like you have an idea and then you somehow string them together where it makes sense or it feels like this is like a really good thought, but also insightful. And so that's what I love about the writing aspect. And I think it's tough. Even before we jumped on this, I was finishing up my newsletter and like,
I got it in
there's
my
a lot.
inbox.
Oh, thank you. I still need to post to LinkedIn, but I got the email version out. It's tough. And then also too, like the reward for it is it's not like having a viral video. Like when you give feedback through email, I love that. A lot of feedback I get is in person or through DMs. It's not always in likes and comments, especially in a newsletter format, because that doesn't exist for the email version.
Right.
And so like you really have to like be confident in what you write and that it's valuable. And I think compared to video and some of these other kind of formats where it's easy to like or leave a comment, you don't always get that with the written format.
So you have a newsletter that is wildly popular, as we
Thank
know,
you.
and building this, like you said, has been a labor of love. You love to write, you've built this audience. So now that you have all this attention on it, let's talk about monetization, what that
Yeah.
looks like. I think a major key that you mentioned is that you have a consulting piece of it too.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense because like now you have the authority and you've been positioned as an expert. And so that's a natural next step. But how did you start, or when did you start monetizing the newsletter?
Yeah, that's a good question. The newsletter will be going to be 3 years in December. And the first time I monetized, this is a great question, maybe about a year and a half ago directly, right? So like the newsletter is something I started when I was working a 9 to 5. It was a way for me to kind of share my thoughts, what I was doing from work, but also kind of build this thing of my own. And so up until, more recently, it's always been more about providing value and less about monetizing it. Yeah, some people reach out for sponsorships. I'll do it if it makes sense. And so now I'm in a little different situation. But I would say most of the monetization actually isn't directly from sponsorships. It's that, I've been writing this newsletter, people find it valuable. They have a need. They need someone to speak at a conference. I'll get booked for speaking. I'll get booked for internal training and education. Consulting is a big one, right? So by kind of sharing my thoughts and giving people a preview of what I can offer from insights, it kind of helps people cut through the noise of, hey, we want to bring in support for the consultants, advisors. This is someone's newsletter that I know they have some knowledge around a space. I tune into it. Other people like it. It's valuable. It's helping my job. It's helping creators. Let's see if we can work with them. But with the sponsorship aspect is that, to me, the most important aspect is that people enjoy it and find it valuable at the end of the day. And so if I can work with a brand to integrate them in a newsletter in a way that still provides value, whether it's a new tool, a service, or a report that's still going to fit with what I'm hoping to accomplish, I'll do it. But more so, I think it's really the lead generation aspect where I'm putting out this content. Now I'm starting to add more CTAs of like, hey, I'm offering consulting advising, because not everyone knows that. And I've never really done that before. I worked for an influencer marketing platform, and I'm talking about influencer marketing. Obviously, I couldn't do sponsorships with competitors. Like that wouldn't make sense while, when I was in my 9 to 5. So now that I'm solo, I can do those sponsorships when they make sense. And so in those terms, I'm getting people to reach out, but also doing some proactive reach out now that I don't have this limitation that I, had before. I use Beehive as a platform for the email version. They have an ad network. And so every now and then I'll, use their placements just to get some extra funds and monetize that piece of content if it makes sense.
As I know that also your journey from being in a 9 to 5 to going like full-time entrepreneurship is really recent, right? Like when did that
Yeah.
start?
That's about a little over 2 months ago.
Oh
A
my
little
God.
2 months and change. Yeah. So it's been fun, been challenging, but I'm enjoying it. And I would say the newsletter played a big role in that. If I didn't have the newsletter or the content, creation aspect of the audience, I wouldn't have been as comfortable in leaving a stable job and a paycheck. And so, like, I'm really thankful for taking the time out to launch this thing, because it is a significant piece of why I'm able to do what I'm doing today.
Okay, so let's talk about like for the people, just so the people know, in the 2 months since you went out on your own, I mean, one of the things, you've done many things, I'm sure, in that time. One of the things is literally getting invited to the White House. Can you
Yeah.
please tell us about that experience? You outlined it in your newsletter, and I was like, Lindsey, I have to have you on. Talk about this. It's so cool that you were there for something that's like, of course, a first time occurrence, but also the fact that creators are getting platforms like being invited to the White House, being at the DNC and having a prominent role at the DNC, like more credentials than media in some
Yeah.
cases. Can you kind of give us just your experience and also some of the breakdown that you shared in your newsletter?
First of all, it was an awesome experience, and I think especially that the timing of it was awesome. I had just decided to leave my company, and I'm going solo, and like one of the biggest, I would say, probably a milestone in my career is to get invited to the White House. I had never been before, but also get invited for my work. And it wasn't through the company I worked for, it was through my newsletter, to my content. So that made it even more special. And there was a couple of other folks that were in a similar kind of space where they write a newsletter, they consult, they advise. But the majority of people were, either content creators or people that worked for big companies too. It just was really a great experience, I think, for a couple of different reasons. First of all, it wasn't just a great experience for me personally. I think for the industry as a whole, for the White House to recognize the creator economy and the people that are playing a role in it, and to put together a day of programming and to invite people into the White House when there's a lot of other really important things going on, and to have senior White House officials, to have President Biden stop by for 40 minutes. And so a lot of the day was really listening to different panels and keynotes and conversations between creators and some of the senior White House officials. And the major kind of topics were AI, fair pay, and mental health. So all things that I think come up a lot in conversations. You talk about the struggles of creators, and also me personally too, moving into a solo position. Like I'm a creator, but I'm a marketer. I think it's relatively the same. And I had left my job. I had to figure out, hey, what am I going to do for health insurance? Hey, I have a wife, I have a family. I can jump on, my wife's health insurance, was great, but not all creators have that. And so a lot of the things they talked about, I connected with, in my new journey, but also were really great for the overall creator community. Mental health is a big one, right? You're, as a creator, you're having to put out content every day, and it's just a struggle. You're not always making money every day. It's not as glamorous as sometimes it can be in the headlines. But also, when you have a big following, it can be harmful. People are mean. People feel
Oh my
really confident in the comments, especially when you're saying things that go against or different than what they think. Like for people that have millions of followers, like I don't know how they do it sometimes.
I
And
know, like the access that they have to you. And I think about like, the comment section is a vile place.
yeah.
And it's actually interesting because you said that like you don't get as much direct feedback because you're kind of putting out the newsletter, which kind of feels like a maybe nice mental health wise.
Well, the funny thing is, when I maybe about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, when LinkedIn like started like popping off for like content creation, and like it's still going well. But I
Mhm.
remember I wrote something about like ESPN's creator program, and like I had the weirdest people in my DMs, just like folks like, don't write about that, like just negative
What?
stuff. And I had some other people that like argued about, what I wrote about, which was this creator program, how it was a good opportunity for creators. And I don't know if the creators are getting paid at that, but for me, like I thought it was a great opportunity for those creators at that stage. And so I experienced a little bit of the comment section. And that was the first time as a creator, which was really interesting. And so now I could care less what people say, right? I don't block people. I go back and forth, and not in a negative way, but I'm open to opinions. And then the other ones were about fair pay, which is a big topic, right? I think you always see creators coming out on social media platforms and talk about how brands are lowballing them or don't want to pay them, which is fair. I've been on both sides of
Mhm.
working on behalf of a brand and trying to tell them like, hey, you need to pay creators more. You're asking them to do a lot. Like just
Yeah.
because they like your brand, they're not going to just sell their soul for a product and a $50 gift card. So that was a big aspect of like, can you build standardization around creator pay, which I think is hard and maybe not the best uh, place for the White House to step into. I think the more important conversation was like, how do you give people the flexibility to go and be creators, go and be solopreneurs by allowing them to get health insurance that's affordable,
Right.
allowing them to buy a home without having a W-2. That's something that I had to think about. We were in the process of home shopping. We
Oh
have a
my
little
God. I didn't
kid,
even think about
and I going solo. We had to stop that because most banks aren't going to give you a loan based on you being a 1099 employee. And then the other one was AI, right? AI is providing a lot of benefits for creators. I try to use it whenever I can, but at the same time, these big companies are scraping creators' data and their content and monetizing and selling it for millions, eventually billions of dollars. And so the White House was trying to figure out how can they, put regulations that protect creators and people that are putting out content from getting abused, and also is there a way for those creators and uh, people putting out content to be able to get paid from their content, and what existing laws and policies can be kind of transform or transition to creators.
That's so important. I think that especially in these conversations, just to have it from the perspective of the creator economy is obviously great for representation and showing that like, yeah, of course this is like, a multi-billion dollar industry
Mm.
and you can't just ignore it. And as much as people might not really understand it, it's here. Do you think that there's lasting impact of having that White House Creator Conference?
For sure, for sure. This current administration has, done a lot with creators. I think even from like the DNC, and I think, this is the first ever. I don't know if, depending on how things play out, it could happen again. It might not, but creators are playing a significant role. And I think by what the administration has been doing outside just this one event shows that like they really care about it. It's not just a PR type of thing. Of course, everyone picked it up because it's like the White House is inviting a bunch of creators and industry professionals and everything. But I think it kind of provides the vehicle for dialogue for them to understand and kind of hear directly from the people that are being impacted and people that are working with creators. There's a long way to go, but I do think there's a lot of policies and laws today that can be tweaked. It can be much better, but like whether it's creators, entrepreneurs, or just freelancers, it's kind of all the same in a
Right.
sense. Like there's a lot of challenges, and it's very unique for some, but like there's a lot of kind of similarities there that the White House and other other people can build on to provide a space and resources for creators to be successful.
One thing I like about the conversation is just really highlighting the influence and the responsibility a lot of times that creators have. So I think that conversation came up a lot when it came to the DNC creators, right?
Yeah.
So you saw the chatter, and I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure you also wrote about it already. How there was this struggle with media and creators, and the fact that there was press credentials that creators were getting that were going further than maybe even people from the New York Times and other traditional media that always had that
Yeah.
space in the room. And as somebody like my background, like I'd studied journalism, I'm always going to advocate for traditional journalism, but I'm also a creator too.
Yeah.
And there is this responsibility, but a lot of people are really aware of that responsibility. And there's creators who do their research and they want to inform their audiences and be really fair and honest, just like you are with your newsletter. Like you spend a lot of time on it. It's your craft. It's not just something where you're blowing smoke up people's ass because
Mm.
you're trying to monetize, right? Like it's people care. So what did you think about that conversation about, creators having this role?
Yeah, I mean, before we even get to that, when Biden came out, one of the biggest things he said was like, you were trusted talking to the creators in the room, and like there was a little bit of friction or with him and the traditional press because the traditional press was there too when he came out, and they eventually got kicked out.
Yeah.
But yeah, but like that kind of set it off. It's like there's a reason why they're inviting creators and industry professionals to talk about this industry, but also because those people are going to go out and write about it in the newsletter. They're going to create TikTok videos. They're going to go to Instagram, and they're going to be excited. Like I think that's one of the things that is kind of missing, right? Traditional journalism is really important, but it's sometimes it doesn't have the opinion or the perspective that people want. That's the whole thing about influencers. You like people because of their perspective or because they're unique, and so that's why I think a lot of creators are getting access to these spaces because they not only they have this audience that's online where Harris, Trump, they all want to reach these younger folks. That's where they're going to get their news, their content. They're not watching television as much. And so creators are kind of the vehicle of reaching the audiences they want to reach. But also as a creator, like, I mean, when I went to the White House, it was a cool experience. Like, I think for those journalists, the traditional journalists, they probably have been there before, right? Like, it's just like standard work. So, like, for me, it was not only great to go to the White House, but like to be able to create content around it and be able to have that access. Like, that was kind of to me like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I think that's kind of where you get with these individual creators too, where like hopefully you're still doing your research, but you have this perspective. And I think the perspective is really important. I don't think I'm not necessarily going to creators for politics, for not that factual politics, but I'm going to anyone for a perspective, right?
Right.
And it's up to me to make sure that if they're sharing information, that I'm not taking everything as facts, right? Ideally, they're sharing facts and they're getting it right. But at the end of the day, they're just a commentator. It's a person with an opinion. They have a platform, and it's up to viewers to be able to understand that.
I love that you said commentator because I think that is really like the way people should look at it. For example, like when you said commentator, the first thing I thought was, the girl sitting around the table on The View. So like they have opinions, right? Like they're there, like that's the point of the show, is that they just have their perspectives, but no one's going there for hard news, right? Like
Yeah.
they're hearing about things, but you're not going to the View for hard news. So like you can follow creators and listen to creators, but you need to like also go read the non-bias media
Yeah.
to know the facts of what happened, educate yourself, and also see these perspectives, have your own opinion on them. That's the process of it. But I think sometimes those things get inflated when people are concerned that creators are going to replace traditional
Yeah.
media. That's not the case. That's not what anyone's trying to do.
Yeah. But I mean, that's with life as a whole.
Right.
There used to be traditional television, then there was cable, and now there's streaming, and now there's social media. Like everything changes, and what happens is there's some great journalists that lean into being creators as well. Like I think that's if I
Yes.
was a journalist, I would not only be doing my my traditional work, writing and all that, but I also would be leaning into social media and being a creator as well because you can it's not like that's not available to you, but like everything gets disrupted, like AI is disrupting jobs and whatnot. And as we see, people, if you don't adapt, you usually get left behind. And so that's how I kind of look at it. I think you really need both, whether it's traditional journalists or creators or stream traditional television, cable, and streaming and YouTube and social. Um, and you need both. There's a lot of benefits of both. And I think as an individual, there's so much content to consume, and we want the options to consume and watch and get content from the people that we, want to get content and opinions from
Yeah.
in the
Consume with
sources.
caution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
figure out who your sources are, consume with caution, right? Like
Yeah.
bring back media literacy. That's like a whole other
Yeah.
episode
Yeah.
that we can have. It's something I'm like always like, please. But I want to know your opinion on, so this topic comes up a lot, like with some media friends of mine when we talk about Shannon Sharp, Club Shay Shay, and Shannon Sharp. And then also I'm kind of thinking about maybe like influencers who end up on red carpets as hosts and things like that. Do you think that, they need to maybe have formal journalism training, or do you think that like they should not even have that type of responsibility? Because I think sometimes like with Shannon Sharp, I remember people were kind of putting things on like it's Shannon Sharp, first of all. It's Shannon Sharp, but people were really like, he's not asking the right questions. And I'm like, you guys are holding him to journalistic standards, and
Yeah.
I'm confused because he's a media personality, but this is an entertainment show. So I want to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts on that.
No, I mean, I think no, I mean that's a different platform than that's a platform that's different than other platforms. As a viewer, like you should hold people accountable and like when it comes to asking the right questions. But that's a platform of his, right? Like who's to
Right.
tell him what questions to ask? And then also too, like I think the what happens is that there's no value in what he or similar people do if it's the same as traditional media, right? Then you just have someone that's doing exactly what has always been done. And so I think, yeah, as a viewer, you can always have your opinions, but when it comes to, non-traditional, like athletes and creators getting access and shows to share their thoughts and interview people, like there's a reason why those people are being brought in. They have a unique perspective or opinion or presence that people want to hear or watch or see. If they want to go back to the traditional stuff, there's plenty of people, right? Like
It was funny, yeah.
there's plenty of people out
Well,
there.
it is disappearing. I can't
Yeah,
act like media is not dying, unfortunately, but
that's true.
still.
I mean, I think as a person, like they should want to do that training, right? You can only be better, right? You can kind of blend what you do best along with what has been best practices or official training, but it's working for them, right? We're
Yeah.
seeing him, those type of people build up the biggest audiences, way bigger than some of the traditional you know media platforms. Traditional media platforms are trying to be like those platforms in a sense.
Yeah.
That's why they're hiring creators. That's why they're having their personalities become creators and share the social.
I think that's a big lesson for anybody who is like, you're already a professional or an expert in your field, and there is this like hybrid role that you can play, like much like yourself, where you're a creator and you also have like your consulting and things. So like you're getting more visibility for that. It's lead gen. And so that's why I love working with creatorpreneurs. I love that hybrid because
Mhm.
there's so many professionals and experts that don't realize that you also could be a creator to just kind of like help boost your authority. And so even when you have a podcast, a lot of people don't see themselves as creators though. Like maybe if you're
Yeah.
already like, you know what I mean, a consultant with a podcast or somebody that is like an expert or a coach and you have a newsletter, like you're also a creator. So you might as well kind of fall into that hybrid and get more attention on your works.
Everything starts with attention. If people don't know who you are or what you do, how can they give you business? How can they give you opportunities? And so by you taking the time out to share your thoughts, whether it's LinkedIn or podcast or YouTube video or Instagram, whether it's video, audio, written, that's the opportunity for you to get more attention. And we're in the game of attention, right? It's not always true, but if you put out content, what I've seen is like the more content I put out, the more opportunities I get.
Yeah.
Whether that's speaking opportunities, consulting, that's press, right? A lot of I really ever do any outreach to press to get quotes in newsletters or publications. All that comes from my content. People are like, hey, I came across your newsletter. I came across this. Like, do you want to give a quote, right? And so it's content, attention opens up a lot of opportunities. And for people that want to create more opportunities, and if they have the time, you should invest in it and do it in the format, in the way that works best to you. You don't have to do it every day, but that's where we are today. 10 years from now, there's going to be a lot more people working for themselves. And it's going to be who can put out the best content that provides value and be able to turn that into dollars, whether it's working directly with brands or bringing it into their services and whatever else they provide in terms of support.
Lesson learned, put the content out. Don't delay.
Yeah.
I got a little stressed even you just saying there's going to be more people out here putting out more content.
Yeah. But one of the things too is like, it doesn't have to be too hard. I honestly don't have especially to go back to LinkedIn, people have these growth hacks and templates and stuff. I just take what I'm thinking and share it and then move on.
Yeah.
I learned things that here and there from what content people like. People love hearing about Instagram updates, right? But it's really, I have this experience, and just like everyone else has experience and knowledge and examples and insights. Take that and put it in a way that is easy for you to deliver and people understand, and start there and just build upon that. I've been doing this for 6, 7 years. I don't know, 6, 7 years. I go back, maybe shorter, whatever it was on LinkedIn. But like, I go back to all my posts. There's posts that got 0 engagements. Even today, I don't always get engagements on my content, but it's not about that. It's about getting in front of people, and not everyone consumes and engages with your content. But when you meet them in person, they'll say, hey, I love this post. They might have not liked it or commented, but like, they gave me that feedback. That gives me a business opportunity. And, that's how you kind of approach it. Don't overthink it so much.
Yeah, people see you. That's such an important lesson. I always tell people that your content is out there, it's in the universe. People come across it, like you said, and you might not know it, but it's being seen. And so
Yep.
you're doing all this stuff. Like you're like you said, you found something that is an organic, sustainable approach to managing your content, your social presence, these great opportunities that you're getting.
Thank
How
you.
do you like manage your schedule and your day, and how do you kind of do it as a one-man show?
Yeah, it's tougher. So you mentioned this earlier, but me and my wife have a daughter. She's just over 5 months. And so that changes a lot, right? So I decided to go solo at a time where most people try to be safe. And she started daycare a few weeks ago. And so, we had a lot of time together, like, all of us together. And now we're kind of going back to kind of like a routine.
Mhm.
Wife's back at work. I'm working for myself. Daughter's in daycare. And so now it's like every morning I used to have a ton of time, working on stuff. And now I have to get my daughter ready for daycare and spend time with her, right? I don't have as much time to spend that I had before. So the mornings is really important in terms of spending time with my daughter and my wife, taking her to daycare. Then I get my day started. And, it's a lot. It's not just the physical aspect, right? Having the energy to be able to do stuff, but also the mental capacity. I have to be a dad, a husband, and also this person that's trying to figure stuff out, a content creator. And I just try to not be so hard on myself. I try to figure out, lean into the times and that I work best. I'm a morning person. And so I feel really creative in the morning. So I try to do, my newsletter and writing and anything that I really want to leverage my brain power for. And, try to get outside, take walks to kind of, not go too crazy. And, one thing I'm trying to do is figure out or like do different themes for days. So today I have a bunch of podcast interviews, which is like great, right? All I have to kind of prepare for that. And then try to figure out, these are the days where I'm spending time creating content. These are the days I'm doing meetings and work. Just like not being too hard on myself, figuring out when I can work, but still spend time with my family, which is really important. That's the whole reason, one of the big reasons why I want to go out on my own. But yeah, I'm learning every day, and I'm 2 months in, and I'm sure 6 months from now, I'll have a way better process. But I love what I do. I'm going to spend time doing it and try to enjoy it and, build a future off of it.
That's exciting. There's no right answer to that, right? Like you said, it's every day is a new shift. Like
Yeah.
last month looks different from this month because circumstances have changed. But I like to ask people that question because I feel like we're all trying to source like how are you doing it? Like I'm trying to get any
Yeah.
ideas. I love that you have different days for different things. I think we talked about that a little bit before, but I kind of do the same thing because it's like everything relies on us. I had this conversation with a friend last night who's also a business owner, and it's like you are your backup. You're like you are the one who has
Yeah.
to like provide and put food on the table. So you have to kind of figure out where your shortcomings are pretty fast. Like,
Yeah.
and
I,
so
yeah. And I don't really have an option, right? I decided to go on my own. I thought about all the pros and cons. I had a job that I had been at for almost 6 years, and I felt like I built out a really nice space, and it was a steady paycheck, and I enjoyed the work, but I thought it was a good opportunity to challenge myself. And I don't get that steady 2-week paycheck like I was getting before, and so some days it's like you're working, and you don't have that reward. But I know that what I put into it, I'm going to get out of it. And if I don't put enough into it, I'm not going to get anything. Sometimes a little bit of luck, but it's like, to me, is like, let me try to build something of my own and see where I land. And if it doesn't work, I'm back to the 9 to 5.
exactly. You can always go back. But
Yeah.
you're off to a
Yeah.
really good start, Lindsey.
Thank you.
I remember I was like, it's been 2 months. Like I thought you were
Yeah.
out here like a couple of years now. Like,
Yeah.
damn.
I need to make it known a little more. I did one LinkedIn post, and I probably should do a little more
Yeah, that's what's up. It's part
business
of the
generation.
journey.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what though? Like at this point, what would you call, I guess, like this era for you? What is this moment of your life called?
Betting on myself.
Mm.
I would say betting on myself, right? And I think I just, we're in a weird place with layoffs and companies and, you know, going away from DE and I. And, I think that you got to bet on yourself. If you feel like you have the confidence and education and the experience
Mm.
to build something of your own, why not do it, right? You don't have to worry about getting an email and or you're trying to get into your work email and you're locked out, right? You don't have to kind of do the mental gymnastics when it comes to performance reviews and the politics of sometimes the corporate world. And also, like, so in some cases, you're making someone else rich, right? If you can make yourself rich, why not do it? And if it doesn't work out,
That's okay.
there's always going to be jobs there. So yeah, betting on myself, seeing what I can do, and trying something new too. I got to spend extra time with my daughter because of this. So if for anything, that would be more than worth it at the end.
Already worth it. I'm so excited to see what's next for you. I mean, there's been so much of a journey already. So I'm glad we got to listen to a little slice of your life in this moment. But
Thank you.
we will be checking back in. But in the meantime, I'd love for you to share how people can connect with you. We're going to have things in the show notes, of course, but where can we find you? How can we, read your newsletter and what's next? Anything else coming up?
Awesome. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. If anyone wants to connect, my website, lindseygamble.com. I have the newsletter, lindseygamble.com/newsletter. There's also a LinkedIn version. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so if you search my name on there, you should be able to find me. I'm responsive too. Reach out I'll be happy to chat. I know back when I was trying to get started and I reached out to a lot of people, I always didn't have success. And so when I can, especially for people that are early in their career or want some advice, I'm happy to kind of, pay my dues and give back. In terms of what I have next, what do I have next going on? Doing a little more speaking. I'm going to probably try to launch a paid subscription version of the newsletter, and, forcing myself to monetize more of the content, right? Like I'm putting a
As
lot of
you
time
should.
living it.
Hmm.
And so maybe a paid version that's focused for influencer marketing or influencer marketers and like strategies and tactics, but still keep the today's version free because that's really important to help people. But we'll see. Next time we chat, hopefully I have some more to share.
Yeah, so exciting. Yeah, I definitely want to chat with you more about that. And Lindsey, you're such a light. Like I'm so excited that you've
Thank
had so
you.
much going on for you, in these last few months alone. But I know that there's a lot of great stuff here that people can tap into, whether they're learning about how to monetize, whether they're trying to be a LinkedIn influencer like you, because that's like a thing now, LinkedIn
I don't.
influencing.
I don't think I've ever used that personally, but I'll take it. Right? I'll take it. I'll take
You would, you would, you really would.
it.
This is the time. So if you want to learn how to be a LinkedIn influencer, hit up Lindsey.
Yeah,
He said he's cool with you sliding in the DMs.
of
Thank you
course.
so much for being here, Lindsey. This was a great chat.
Thank you.